Hello, welcome back to Naming the Purple Elephant, the podcast where we talk about the patterns we feel but rarely name, the ones shaping our relationship, our leadership, and the way we show up under pressure. Today's conversation sits right at the intersection of attachment, nervous system, safety, identity, and communication, which is where most of the real work actually lives, both personally and professionally. I am joined by Samantha, a confidence and intimacy coach with over a decade of experience in clinical social work. Her work focuses on helping people reconnect with their bodies, understand their nervous system signals, and shift the internal patterns that keep repeating in relationships and in life. And what I really appreciate about Samantha's approach is that intimacy isn't framed as something separate or private. It's about self trust, boundaries, emotional safety, and identity, which are the same foundations I work with inside organizations, leadership teams, and high pressure environments. So, whether you're listening as a leader or a professional or someone trying to build healthier connections in your life, this conversation is very much for you. Samantha, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So I want to talk a little bit about the origin of your work.
Mhm.
You describe your work as centered on intimacy, communication, and nervous system safety. How did you come to specialize at this intersection of somatics and identity work and relational healing?
Yeah, I think this roots back to my personal story around my own lived experiences of sexual violence, domestic violence, and it really inspired me to just because I have gone through so many of these challenges myself around not feeling good in my body, around feeling unworthy. And this didn't just stem from intimacy, it flowed over into my work at some point and how I showed up in my professionalism and all of those things, because I believe all of those things are connected. So, I'll tell a little story as to like how I actually got into my career. So when I was in grade 8, I I had my friend, he approached me. I remember I was putting my coat on the rack and he's like, "Hey, we're nominating you for class award." And I was like, "What's that? Like, what's the class award?" And he's like, "Well, it's the award for the student who, she's really kind, she's nice, she's a role model, she helps other people out, she's very understanding and empathetic, and we're all nominating you." And I had no idea that I was all of these things, by the way. Okay. I was just in grade 8. I was just doing my thing. I was just being a little kid. And to have that reflected back to me at such a young age, it was in that moment where I was just like, you know what? This is exactly like I want to be in a career where I'm able to be myself, or I'm able to help people and feel fulfilled about it. Because even though I was in grade 8, like I had I had such healthy friendships in grade 8. It was so lovely, especially with males too. Like I had a lot of males who were protective in the healthy way and just supported me and saw me for who I was. And having that reflected back to me, I was like, this is something that I want to get into. One, because I was going through a lot of personal stuff at home. And that was one of the biggest roots as to why I got into this work as well, too, is because for me, when I see kids just like going through something at home, whether that be sexual violence, domestic violence, or just like even the emotional piece of it of not being supported properly, it genuinely breaks my heart because kids, they're so they're so innocent. They have like very little room and space to like actually advocate for themselves sometimes. And I just remember being like, okay, I want to be the one that shows other moms, shows other parents how to come back to nervous system regulation, how to better have emotional conversations with their kids so that, for example, when intimacy does come up, when people are having teenagers or when they're going into their adult life, that parents know how to actually approach the conversation from a standpoint where their child is going to actually open up to them instead of, them feeling shamed about it, right? And a big piece of my work, it really is rooted in safety, because I feel that, and I know that I've seen this with all of my clients, when you have a safe space to heal, that's where you can actually be seen for all parts of who you are. Like your inner child, your adult self, the protector part of you, and even the shadow part, because we're all human. And I mean, none of us are perfect. Like, I know I've definitely done some stuff that I'm not so proud of in the past. You know what I mean? We all have, right? And I, I really just, I love creating the safe space for people to be able to come, be seen in their like rawest version of themselves, and know that they're still going to be seen at their highest potential. They're still going to be seen for who they are at the core of their heart. And that we can work with all these parts. We can work with the shadow. We can work with the past parts that, maybe we're not so proud of, and integrate it into our current life and bring more deep love and not only just acceptance around it, but like acceptance and integration. I think integration is a huge piece of this work, and that we can evolve as human beings and learning to love all versions of ourselves. And I believe that that just connects so deeply into our intimacy, because when we can come into full acceptance and confidence of ourselves, all parts of us, like there's nothing that can stop us after that. We can show up, we can express our needs, and we can be in the kind of the identity of like, hey, like this is who I am. I'm an evolving human being. Not only am I an evolving human being, but I'm also flawed, and that's okay. And the more that you can come into like that deep confidence within yourself, knowing that you're a human being, you're going to make mistakes, that's one of the most powerful things that you can come back to, because I just feel like you're undeniable after that. And I've seen it within myself. I've seen it within my clients. And also too, it just gives other people the permission to be loved for unconditionally for who they are despite their past. And this is so connected to coming into the workplace as well too, because I know that's like one of your big focuses, right? And
Hmm.
when we can bring that into the workplace, like our humanness, all while having like our own boundaries, and like that's so individualistic to different people, then I feel like workplaces can be so much more healthier and have more breathing space and more love and acceptance, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Creating safety is very important. I mean, it's very important to be able to create safety in relationships.
Mhm.
It's important to create safety within the workplace. And it's also really important to create safety internally, because once you feel safe internally,
Yeah.
then what you reflect out is really positivity and drawing like really psychologically safe experiences back towards you. The
Mhm.
problem is, though, most people don't know how to create safety.
Yeah.
They don't know how to create it internally within themselves, which then reflects out to why there's so much workplace toxicity, why people have such horrible relationships, and there's this
Mhm.
huge breakdown. Because when you have that safety, internally within yourself, then you are able to repair. You can repair at work. You can repair
Exactly.
breakdown in communication anywhere. So, it's absolutely important to have.
Yeah, I love that you brought up repair, because I think, like, I was talking about how we're all none of us are perfect, right? But we can,
Right? Yeah.
I think the best way to evolve is through repair of like, not just with other people, right? Like repair with ourselves too, these past versions of
Hmm.
ourselves, these past identities, because we can get so caught up in like, yeah, like that's not me anymore. And like, uh, and we can be proud of the version of who we are today, because obviously it takes a lot of inner work and integration to become a different version of yourself. But like, instead of shaming those parts and like dismissing them, coming into a repair piece of them so that you can, like, that to me, that's just like a holistic approach of loving yourself, right? Like, because it goes back to the unconditional part of like, can you also like love yourself when it's messy, right? And I think that's a
Absolutely.
huge thing. And with as you go along your healing journey, and this is just what I've witnessed within myself and within clients, the mess starts to look a little bit different because you're responding differently. Like you're not in reactive mode. I think that's what I see a lot in workplaces is there's so much internal stuff happening on the inside for each individual, and people are just so used to like reacting and snapping instead of just taking a moment to just like, okay, I don't have to respond to this right now. Can I always tell my clients this. Whenever you're in a situation where you feel overwhelmed, overstimulated, ask yourself how you can slow down first and then you can respond to it. And it doesn't have
Yes.
to look perfect every time because sometimes we can get heated in the moment and the emotions can get the best of us. Like I said, like we're human beings. And then, learning that repair piece, which I think is going to be crucial for so many people in workplaces and just in relationships in general too. Like, yeah.
Yeah. You know, I know that you work primarily with clients between the ages of 20 and 45 who struggle with emotional expression.
Mhm.
I'm very curious, what patterns do you see most often in this age group, and what do you think is driving those patterns?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to answer your question backwards. So, what do I think is driving the pattern? Because I think before we can even go into any of the following, we have to come back to the root, right? Like, and I think a lot of what the patterns that I see is a lot of people are not willing to necessarily go to that route or they don't know how to, right? And that's okay. Like that's when they come to people like you and me. and we learn about that. Like I didn't learn this just on my own. I learned it from going to therapy. I learned it from hiring coaches
Yes.
and different people because I think the people that we engage with, like when it comes to our healing journey around like therapy, hiring coaches, whatever it is, like their life experience is so connected to like how we're going to evolve as people as well too, because that's where they're coaching from that perspective, right? But so to answer your question, like I think it's important to come back to the root cause, which a lot of it has to do with childhood wounding, you know, the
Yes.
relationship with your parents is extremely crucial, or caregivers I should say, right? Because not everybody has parents that are present in their life, right? So the relationship that you have with your caregivers I think is one of the most important things, because think about it, especially when you were growing inside your mom's tummy, okay? There's a literal cord, an umbilical cord that is attached to you and her. And so looking at when I say the root cause, like I'm not just talking about like your experience from when you were like just born to when you're in your adolescence or teenage or adult, whatever. I'm actually talking about too the experience that you had in the womb with your mom. When your mom was carrying you, what was happening? Because I had this conversation with another podcast that I was on this week, and some people
Hmm.
come to me and they haven't experienced the big T trauma. They're like, you know, I've gone through some stuff in life, but nothing like I had parents, they nurtured me really well, and I don't know where this is coming from. And I always ask my clients, like, well, are you comfortable to have that conversation with the person who carried you in their womb, if you have access to that, to the answers of like, what was happening for them during their pregnancy? How was the relationship with their partner, with your father? How was that? Because the baby is like you as a baby in your mother's tummy is going to be feeling that because you're attached to your mom. Just because you're on the inside doesn't mean you're not hearing what's on the outside, right? And that impacts the way that you're developed and the way that when you come into the world as well too, how you're going to feel your sense of belonging. Because say, and I've had this is a very common theme with a lot of my clients where they were born like they were quote unquote an accident. Like their parents weren't intentionally trying to have a baby, but it happened. And some of my clients experience like, their mom didn't want them. And it's not that their mom doesn't love them right now or anything. Obviously, when a baby's born, like everything just changes after that for a lot of people. But what happens is if the mom is like having thoughts around, okay, I don't want this baby, or this pregnancy feels really hard. And again, this is not to place blame on the mom or anything. Like, pregnancy is hard, being a mom is hard. I want to acknowledge that. But when these thoughts are happening, and then say the parents don't have a great relationship either, then the baby is actually feeling that and absorbing that, of like, okay, on a subconscious level, okay, I'm not being welcomed into this world in the way that I'm supposed to be. There's no sense of belonging for me because I'm not wanted. I'm just using this as an example, right? So that's one of the things, like looking at what was happening when you were being conceived. And then also too, of course, after conception, like after conception, after birth, what was happening for you during your childhood? And maybe it wasn't with your parents, like maybe it was stuff that was happening for you at school. I have a lot of clients who've come to me, and they talk about how, they experienced a lot of bullying because of their physical attributes, because of their outgoing personality, and just them being themselves. Like when we're kids, there's a very little filter that we have, okay? Because we don't know. And then as we grow up and we have these experiences where maybe we're made fun of for how we look, we start to put these layers on, and it starts to warp how we show up in the world, right? And so when we are showing up in the world with these layers and with these masks on, we're not actually showing up as our true selves, like the true core of who we are. And I think that that always comes back to like how we were as kids. And that doesn't mean that you don't have permission to change, you don't have permission to evolve, because of course, like that's what life is about. It is a part of it's you're meant to be here to evolve and to change. But there's certain core parts of ourselves that a lot of us have shut off because we're told it was too much, because we're told, we're not enough, right? And it's just like this programming that just gets turned on and conditioned as we function in the world, and it impacts our intimacy, like the parts of ourselves that we show in relationships, the parts of ourselves that we show at work, right? It affects our performance as well too, in the work environment as well, because we're running off certain belief systems of, okay, I'm worthy, I'm not worthy, I'm intelligent, I'm not intelligent. And too, I think another pattern that I see is like this comparison, especially with how social media and technology is evolving and has already evolved. We're seeing people's lives in a way that we've never seen before, that we're not really used to. And my mentor, she always says this, like, we're not meant to see everybody's life like this, and we're seeing like this highlight reel. And so there's this like comparison of like, oh my gosh, this person has this amazing life, or oh my gosh, this person is so confident. And we're not really seeing what's happening behind the scenes, because not everybody is sharing every detail. They don't have to, right? But I think it's like these are the patterns: is childhood, conception, comparison, and then of course past relationship trauma. Like, that's one of the biggest things, right? There's no better reflection and integration piece than being in a relationship, because your partner is going to be mirroring to you different parts of yourself that maybe you need to embody or come into deeper healing into, right? So that is my long-winded answer for your question. It's
Yeah.
so
No,
multi-layered.
thank
It's so multi-layered and so individualistic to every person, right? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, because one of the biggest pieces of my work that I do is I go into organizations and work with them with the big belief that we don't leave our full selves at the door. We
Mhm.
completely bring in our attachment styles, we bring in our trauma, and that directly impacts how we lead, our workplace culture, how we're showing up day to day.
Mhm.
And a lot of times is people don't even recognize that, right? They
Oh, yeah.
don't understand, "Oh my god, I'm bringing in all of these things into an environment that is creating a very negative, hurtful, harmful, unsafe environment." Um, you know, like I said, I believe that we're a mirror. So
Yeah.
what we are internally, we project out. And a lot of times from childhood, like you mentioned, we have these stories that start to form very
Mhm.
early in life. I'm not good enough and I'm going to be abandoned and, all of these things. And they become these operant thoughts in our mind.
Yeah.
And what happens is because we've had those operant thoughts since childhood, they're just now on automatic
Yeah.
download. And so we think them. And what happens is, as we're thinking it, we're attracting exactly those experiences that we don't want to have. So if you're scared of being abandoned, but you're always focused on, I always abandon people, always leave me, guess what happens? Those are the experiences that you continue to keep attracting to yourself, whether with friendships that just don't last, relationships that continue to fall apart, because even though that's not the experience that you want to have healthy, secure friendships, relationships, that download that we have inside of ourselves, we now are living it because that is what our dominant thoughts are. So it's
Mhm.
so important to do this healing to recognize what those dominant thoughts are so that we are attracting, the lived experiences that we want.
Yeah. I completely agree. And you worded that so well. Truly, yeah. It's so important to do this because I think, like you said, like so many of us, and I know you probably have your own story as well too, of like, we've wanted to change these patterns. And I just think a lot of people are scared too because it's hard to go
Yes,
back to the root cause of things. It's hard to go back to certain things and address it, and it's hard to take accountability too. I think that is one of
absolutely.
the most important things, is like taking ownership and accountability of your life. Like it's not your fault what happened to you. It isn't. But you need to be able to take accountability because you're an adult, and accountability for your healing, I should say. Take accountability and be able to understand that yes, you might have these downloads, these programmings, and be on autopilot, but it doesn't have to be like that forever. I truly believe that all of us, every single person on this earth, we have choices. No matter how hard, I hear the saying. I used to hear this from a lot of people that I used to surround myself with, and now I have different friend circles, so we don't use this language, but I've been dealt bad cards in my life, and yes, some things are out of our control. Truly, some things are out of our control, but there are a lot of things that are in our control. But I see that people are, I guess, like not willing to kind of sacrifice their old life and their old habits to create the life that they're saying that they want, you know? For example, like
Right.
the best way to interrupt these belief systems, these narratives, these stories that we've told ourselves is by making a different decision. And it's in the micro decisions, right? For example, you want to be somebody who is an athlete or into fitness. All right. So, like, how does that person operate? What do they do? How are they thinking? Maybe they're getting up really early. Maybe they're investing in a nutritionist. Maybe they're investing in a life coach. Maybe they're investing in a trainer, right? I'm just using the gym is always a great example to use. And putting in the reps for that, you know? And this is another pattern that I see is people give up way too soon because it gets really hard and it gets very confronting. But that's the point of it, like confronting these different parts of yourselves in a compassionate way, but also in a way of like, okay, you know what? Like, I am responsible for this. I am responsible for my life, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. And again, learning one of the big things that I teach my clients, I'm very somatic based, but like there's a time where, yes, listen to your body. I'm all about listening to your body. Listen to your body, listen to your intuition. But how can you listen to your body if you haven't even been taught how to do that? And I
Right.
like to go into the sensations around, like, as human beings, we are emotional beings, regardless of whatever attachment style you are, regardless if you come off as like stone cold hard. Like, it's usually the ones who are stone cold hard who are like the softies on the inside and have a lot of that, emotional buildup, right? But I always say, like, okay, like we've never been taught about what our body sensations are actually signaling to us, what they actually mean, you know? And then we just normalize it and say, oh, well, I have anxiety. Oh, well, I have depression. And yes, those things are real. Like, I still experience that sometimes, but having different tools and learning how to navigate it through and learning how to navigate through it in a different way than what you've been on autopilot doing is important, you know? So for example, like if I'm having anxiety or I'm having like a not great day, I'm not pushing through my day and ignoring my anxiety. And I think that's what we've been taught to is like build tough skin and, you got to just push through. And there are times for that, yeah. But if you continue to like create that habit of pushing through and not understanding your body's signals, then what's going to happen is you're going to continue to store all of that emotional pent up stuff. It can form into disease, okay? Whether it's mental, physical, whatever it is. And then you're not going to know where it's coming from because, again, you haven't taken the time to understand your body, right? And one of the things that I think is so important for women, especially, is understanding your cycle. That is a huge part of, because I know for myself, like whenever I'm like, if I'm having a breakdown or I'm crying or like things are happening, I'm like, hold on, let me pause. Where in my cycle am I? Where in my cycle am I? Because this might just be my hormones doing hormone stuff. And also too, I think it's important to like build a relationship with the cycle of your body, especially as a woman, because it's reflecting back to you certain things. Like I'm somebody who like, I believe in energetics and very spiritual. And I think like every month we're being reflected back a lot of our wounding, a lot of things that we want to deepen into, a lot of things that are calling us to a higher part of ourselves, to embody that higher part of ourselves. Right. And each phase has its own purpose if we're willing to look at it instead of, you know, shaming our body or cursing our body when really this cycle is so beautiful. Yes, it can involve some pain and discomfort, some more than others. But if we look at it from like a divine standpoint, it is so beautiful. Your body is literally working for you without you having to do anything. And can we learn to like soften into that and rest when we need to? Can we learn our cycles of like, okay, a week and a half before I'm supposed to menstruate, I might be feeling really sad. I might be feeling really angry. There might be stuff that's coming up for me. And not making it mean that we're regressing in our journey or that we're bad people or that we're having these like insane thoughts. It's like, okay, this is my body just doing its purging process. And then it's rebirthing and rebuilding. And how beautiful is that we get to have that opportunity every single month as women to do that. Like
Absolutely.
I think our bodies are absolutely amazing, beautiful, smart, intelligent, and it can work to our favor if we learn how to communicate with it, learn how to build a relationship with it, and put that intentional time in it. Just as if you're building a relationship at work, if you're building a relationship with a partner, your body deserves the same thing. And and that's going to bring more regulation into your body, right? When you understand something better and you're able to have those conversations with your body, you're going to be able to show up better at work. Okay. Because your communication skills are going to be way more on point because maybe, I don't know, depending on the environment you're in, like maybe you're able to communicate like, hey, I'm in this part of my cycle and, I might not be as interactive this week, but I'm here if you need me. Like I think that's such a healthy thing to say,
Absolutely.
right? But it's just not considered professional because as women, we've been taught not to talk about our menstruation cycles, right? And I think, and I'm somebody like I also work for like a feminist organization where it's just like it's easier because we're able to talk about that stuff among each other because we're all women. But I would love to just normalize being able to talk about that with anybody, right? Because
Yeah.
our cycles are not just benefiting us, it is benefiting this entire world. Like we're able to literally create another human inside of our body, right? And not only that is like our menstruation is tied to our intuition. Our cycles are tied to our intuition, right? So yeah, I'm very passionate about this. As you can see, I tend to go off on these rants, but I'm very passionate about this.
Yes, I can tell. I know that you come from a background in social work, and
Yeah,
you've mentioned that you've supported colleagues dealing with burnout and compassion
yeah.
fatigue. What did you observe in their bodies and emotional patterns
Mhm.
that leaders often miss?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things is like the tensing up, the physical. Let's go through the physical parts first. Okay. So tensing up.
Okay.
Okay. The shallow breath, the hunched over shoulders, the collapse in the chest, right? Those are all the physical things that are connected to the emotional things. Okay. The tensing up is like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm a professional. I was just having this conversation with somebody is like, we're in this role and it's a role where like we're dealing with people's lives, we're dealing with people's well-being, right? And it can be a lot of responsibility on somebody as a professional because we sometimes think that we have to have all the answers, right? And just because we're professionals, it does not mean that we have to have all the answers. And we have to understand that we're also humans with our own lived experiences coming into these roles. And so, for example, if you're coaching a client or providing therapy to a client, your nervous system could be responding to what's happening to them, right? And so I think that's one of the patterns I see is on like the physical patterns. The emotional patterns of is like there's a lot of imposter syndrome. There's a lot of, not being able to trust ourselves because of our own past experiences of also too like past traumatic work experiences. I see as like a huge, huge commonality among people that I've supported. And I also think too, there's the lack of support at home because when things are good at home, whether that's your relationship, romantic relationship with your kids, relationship with your parents, right? When things are really good at home, it is a lot easier and a lot more, you're able to show up in a different way, in a better way, I think, when
Yes.
when you're feeling supported in your personal life, right? Because if you're not feeling supported in your personal life and then you're coming to work and say like you don't even, I mean, a lot of people are in jobs that they don't like, right? And then you're going to bring that into your work because that's going to be your outlet, right? At work, especially depending on the role you have, maybe you have more authority in your work role than in your personal life. And that's something I see a lot in the work industry, in like the work environments is like people may not be taking responsibility or accountability in their own life, or they're having some challenges at home in their relationship and feeling like they don't have a voice. And then they bring it into the workplace and it comes off through aggression. It comes off through micromanaging, control, all of those things, right? And then we wonder, okay, well, and it builds like such a toxic relationship between employees, between leader to leader, whatever it is, whatever the relationship is, right? And then we see, okay, this is deeper than the actual work itself. Okay, the actual career itself. And it's deeper than all of these things. But like you said, and like when we were talking in the beginning, a lot of people don't actually recognize it and they think that the problem is at work and maybe it is. Like I said, every situation is so individualistic, but a lot of the times it comes back to our own personal stuff, right? And that's where I think too, it's really important for us to, and it's going to look different for everyone, like I said, but just to have really clear boundaries with our work. Because when we can, I feel like boundaries bring so much safety to not only ourselves, especially when we can be clear and direct about it in a kind way, not in an aggressive way. But when we have those boundaries, it does create safety because people are clear on what it is that you expect from them, what they expect from you. And also too, like when you're just clear from the beginning, It just sets the tone. It sets the foundation, right? It's the same thing like in dating too. Like say you go on a date and you're like, you're looking to be in a long-term relationship. And this is something that's coming up with a lot of my clients where they're looking to be in a long-term relationship, but they're very scared to talk about it because it's the first date. And what I encourage people is just like, be honest from the beginning. Like that's not you. That's not you being anxiously attached. It's you knowing exactly what you want. The person, they're at a high level of emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. They're going to respect that you're honest. Because as adults, especially if you're a business owner and you have other stuff happening in your life, you don't want to waste your time, right? And so being honest from the get go and just having those clear boundaries is going to create the safe space. And also using your intuition because someone can be saying something and, your body can be picking up on like, oh, they're saying this thing, but it feels different. It feels like they might not be in integrity with their words. And I also encourage people to trust that because as women, our intuitions, they're usually on point. They're usually right. Right. But
Absolutely.
I don't know if I answered your question because I think I went off on a tangent again, but
It's okay. You know what I'm noticing, and I want to jump a little bit into talking
yeah.
about somatics and workplace culture.
Hmm.
So, workplace culture is really starting to move out of traditional into more holistic. And I really think that what really started that was the last 4 years when we had the Biden administration. That administration was very big on racial equity, inclusivity, belonging, bringing that into the workplace. So much so that they gave a lot of organizations grants to bring that work into the workplace culture.
Oh,
And what I
wow.
found is even though the administration has changed and we have an administration that doesn't care about that as much as the last one. People, different workplaces absolutely loved it. They're like, you know what? We've done this work for the last 4 years and we don't want to go back. We want to continue to focus on well-being and belonging and inclusivity because they see the benefit of it.
Hmm.
There's still some organizations that are stagnant and that are still behind and they have that old way of thinking, but
Yeah.
most organizations have transitioned more into a belonging, inclusive workplace structure. So my question around somatics to you is: you have facilitated meditation, which I absolutely love meditation. I wake up every morning and meditate, and you also have facilitated yoga groups for staff.
Yeah.
What happens to a team dynamic when the nervous system work becomes part of workplace culture?
I love that question. Yeah, I think like when nervous system regulation is practiced, that a lot of employees are able to kind of just let their guard down and actually like be a little bit vulnerable too, and share certain things and be open around like now again, like everybody deserves to have their boundaries. Some people don't prefer to share their personal life, and that's okay. But like when when somebody's feeling regulated, they're able to feel safe enough to express like, okay, hey, I'm struggling with this at work. Hey, you know what? You said something that upset me and this is why it upset me. And I just want to talk, I want to talk about it. I want to build that repair, right? And I think when nervous system regulation is practiced, that teams are able to communicate better, they're able to function better as well too. But like also they're able to build a different community and stay focused on the mission of what the organization is all about, right? Because like we said, like a lot of people are coming into workplaces and there's a lot of personal internal stuff going on that's being projected outwards. When you're regulated, okay, you're able to notice, okay, this is what's happening for me in my body. This is my own stuff. And we're here to also focus on the mission too. So how can I regulate myself? And how can I be an example and lead with that? And then how can we also focus on the organization's mission as well too, right? Because if we're constantly
Right.
dysregulated and we're constantly in reactive mode, there's there's no work that's going to get done properly. You know what I mean? So that's another thing too is like when nervous system regulation is present in the workplace, there's higher quality work. There's higher performance because people are feeling good about themselves, right? There's higher trust. Like everything just starts to improve because people are able to breathe. A lot of people go into work and they're feeling anxious. They're worried about, okay, am I doing this right? I think too, I think too, there's going to be a lot of clarity if people are practicing nervous system regulation. And when I say clarity, I mean like clarity on, and this is something that's come up in people that I've helped with as well too, is like, they're so unclear about their role at work and they're so unclear about their responsibilities. And so when people are more regulated, they're able to actually ask for the help more as well too, of like, okay, hey, I'm not clear about this. Can I get some help? And I think that's a part of nervous system regulation too, is co-regulation, right? And that's what that could look like in a workplace, is asking for help, right? And I think that there needs to be more of that. I've observed that there needs to be
Absolutely.
more of that, because especially if you're a high performing person, yeah, you can do it all on your own, right? But we have teams for a reason, because people have different talents, people have different skills, different capabilities, right? And I think when you're able to bring that into a workplace and have all those different skills, different personalities, all those things come together, and people are regulated at the same time, that's like a dream team. That's like a dream team because, one, there's not that barrier of like competition, right? Because that can happen a lot in a
Right.
workplace too, is like competition. Oh, I might lose my job. Oh, well, I have to be better performing than this person. Now, I mean, it's okay if there's like healthy competition, and that's it, depending on like the work that you're doing. But instead of having that competition piece, there's like that you're regulated because, you're like, hey, I know exactly who I am. I know that I bring high quality work. I do high quality work, and so does that other person. And you can start to see people for who they are too, as human beings and as professionals, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I also too, you mentioned, like, you talked a lot about high performing uh, employees. A lot of high performing employees are actually have anxious attachment styles.
Mhm.
They're overperforming because of this anxious need that, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job, or I've got to be perfect and I've got to
Yeah.
do this. And that again will show up also in their personal relationships. They also overperform in their
Mhm.
relationships as well. So it's definitely all, connected together.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Um, my final question that I have for you is, if you could leave listeners with one embodied reminder about self trust, what would
Mhm.
it be?
Okay. So this is going to sound really simple and really cliche, but I think it's the simple things that we have to come back to, because we think that a lot of people think that the simple things don't work, and that's why they don't do it or they don't stay committed to it, right? And so I would
Right.
say, throughout your day, if you can take 10 minutes 3 times throughout your day to just pause, no screens, no talking to anybody, just sit with yourself and place your left palm to your heart, your right palm to your sacral area, and start to belly breathe. Okay. Maybe I can demonstrate it. Maybe it would be really great for me to demonstrate it. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's place our hand to our left
I would do
chest
too.
above our heart. And then we can place our right palm to our sacral area. And then you're just going to start to pay attention to the cadence of your breath. Just notice it here. And then let's take a deep breath together and just fill your belly up. So start to feel your belly press into your right palm, and then feel your chest expand. And then you can let a big exhale out, releasing any tension. We'll do this breath 2 more times. So deep breath in, fill the belly up. Start to feel the chest expand. And then exhale, big sigh out. Releasing any of the tension, any tightness. And let's do this one more time together. Deep breath in, fill the belly up, fill the chest. And biggest sigh out. And you can remove your palms from your body. You can place them wherever feels good for you. We'll just do like a quick body scan here. So just starting to soften in the forehead. Notice if you're frowning or squinting, and just allow yourself to slowly soften. Softening in the eyebrows, in the eyelids. And gently notice if your jaw is clenched, and unclench the jaw. Separate the teeth. And bringing your awareness to your neck, your shoulders. See if you can just drop the shoulders. Maybe roll the shoulder blades back and down, opening up the heart here. Taking a deep breath in. Maybe this time we're exhaling through the nose. Focusing on your heart center here, where we hold a lot of our tension, a lot of our emotions. And deep breath in. And then exhale through the nose. One more breath, deep breath in. And exhale through the nose. See if you can just soften a little more in your heart center area. And then start to bring your awareness down to your upper abdominal area. Notice any of the sensations you might feel there. Sometimes we might feel anxiety in this area, like knots in the stomach. And if it feels safe for you, you can just place your palm to that area. Feeling the warmth of your palm seep into that area. And just let that warmth maybe start to unravel the knots in the stomach. Breathing deep into that area. Let's take a deep breath in. Exhale through the nose. Deep breath in. Exhale through the nose. One more breath, deep breath in. And exhale through. And start to bring your awareness down to your lower abdominal area, your sacral area. And just notice, maybe you're placing your palms on each side of your belly, feeling your breath rise and fall with your belly. And just dropping into your sacral area here, noticing if there's any tension, noticing if you're even like tensing up the walls around the sacral area. See if you can soften your pelvic floor, soften into the hips. Let's take a deep breath in. And exhale. Deep breath in. And let's do a longer exhale through the nose here. And deep breath in. And exhale. And just start to bring your awareness to the base of your spine here. Notice if there's any tension. And just allow yourself to soften at the base of your spine. Start to soften in the front thighs, the back thighs, hamstrings, softening in the calves, and just softening in the feet, feeling your feet ground into the space beneath you. And as you feel yourself grounding into the space beneath you, just repeating in your mind or out loud, I feeling that support beneath you. I am always supported. Start to bring your awareness back up through the feet, through the legs, through the sacral, all the way up to the heart center, all the way up to the crown of your head. And as you're at the top of your head, the crown of your head, just visualizing yourself looking down to your body and extending gratitude to your body for functioning, extending gratitude for the mind, the heart, the soul that you have. And just enveloping yourself in the energy of self-trust, of confidence, of conviction. And feel yourself start to expand outside of your body and letting the energy of confidence, conviction, self-trust expand outside into your world. And when you're ready, you can slowly start to open your eyes and just start to orient yourself back into the room, noticing the textures around you, noticing the colors, noticing any scents, and just check in with yourself now and just see how you feel here. So that's a nice practice that your listeners can come back to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Samantha, thank you so much for this conversation, for the meditation.
Mhm.
What I love about your work is how it clearly bridges personal healing with collective responsibility. And I love that, you talked about nervous system safety isn't just a relationship issue, it's a leadership issue, it's a culture issue, it's a sustainability issue, it's a personal issue, um, a romantic issue, a friend issue. It all embodies together. So, for those that are listening today, if today's conversation resonated, it's probably pointing to something that wants attention in your body and not just judgment. As always, this is Naming the Purple Elephant, where we talk about the patterns underneath the patterns and how learning to feel safe again changes everything. I will see you in the next episode.
Thank you.